You know what they say about signing documents? Read every line. But what about the lines that aren't there? The ones nobody writes because they assume you'll add them later. Those invisible lines saved my life. They locked me out of the company I built from nothing. But they didn't know I was the one holding the lock, and the key never left my pocket. My name is Ava Harrington, and this is how I learned that sometimes the most powerful weapon in business isn't innovation or capital. It's a single piece of paper filed with the Secretary of State. The story begins 3 years ago in my cramped Chicago apartment, where the smell of burnt coffee mixed with the electric hum of overworked servers. I was 33 then, fresh from the wreckage of NeuroBridge Labs, a biotech research facility that had promised to revolutionize neural interfaces before imploding in a spectacular bankruptcy. Most of my colleagues had scattered to the coasts, taking jobs at Google or Meta, but I stayed in Chicago, nursing wounds that went deeper than unemployment. See, I'd spent 5 years at NeuroBridge developing algorithms that could decode neural signals with unprecedented accuracy. When the company folded, all that work vanished into legal limbo. Locked behind NDAs and intellectual property claims, I watched my life's work disappear into some venture capitalist's filing cabinet, never to see daylight again. That's when I decided to build something of my own, something nobody could take away. The idea came to me during a particularly brutal anxiety attack. As I sat on my bathroom floor, struggling to breathe, I wondered if there were patterns in my voice that could have predicted this moment. Not just the obvious signs like rapid speech or higher pitch, but subtle mathematical signatures hidden in the frequencies. If I could identify those patterns, maybe I could help others recognize their anxiety before it spiraled out of control. I spent the next 6 months living on savings and spite. My living room became a makeshift lab, littered with audio equipment, neural network diagrams, and empty takeout containers. I taught myself audio signal processing, dove deep into transformer architectures, and built my first prototype using nothing but open-source tools and sheer determination. The breakthrough came at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'd been testing the system on recordings of my own voice, tracking my anxiety levels over weeks. Suddenly, the algorithm identified a pattern I hadn't noticed, a slight tremor in certain frequencies that appeared hours before I felt anxious. It was like discovering a new language hidden in plain sight. That's when Ethan Blair entered my life. We met at a tech meetup in River North, one of those awful networking events where everyone's trying to sell you something. I was presenting my early findings to a half-interested audience when Ethan approached during the break. He was everything I wasn't: polished, confident, with that Stanford MBA shine that opened doors before he even knocked. "Your technology is revolutionary," he said, handing me an espresso. "But you're thinking too small." I bristled at that. Helping people manage anxiety isn't small. "That's not what I mean." He pulled out his phone, showing me market research I couldn't have afforded. "Mental health tech is exploding, teletherapy, digital therapeutics, AI-assisted diagnosis. But everyone's focused on treatment. You're talking about prediction. Do you understand how valuable that is?" He painted a picture I'd been too focused to see. Insurance companies desperate to reduce costs, employers wanting to support their workforce, healthcare systems overwhelmed by mental health demands. My algorithm wasn't just a tool, it was a potential industry disruptor. "You need someone who speaks their language," Ethan said. "Someone who can translate your genius into dollars and market share." I should have heard the possessiveness in how he said, "your genius." Should have noticed how quickly he shifted from you to we. But I was tired of eating ramen and coding alone. I was tired of brilliant ideas dying in obscurity. "Equal partners?" I asked. "Equal partners," he agreed, shaking my hand with practiced confidence. The early days of Cerebra Analytics were intoxicating. While I refined the algorithm, Ethan worked his network. He had a gift for making investors see the future we were building. Within 3 months, he'd secured meetings with venture capital firms I'd only read about in TechCrunch. We incorporated Cerebra Analytics, LLC in Illinois on a rainy Thursday in March. Ethan was in New York, charming potential investors at a fintech conference. The lawyer, a tired-looking man named Mr. Davidson, pushed papers across his cluttered desk. "Will Mr. Blair be joining us?" he asked, glancing at his watch. "He's closing deals in New York," I said, trying to sound like someone who regularly said things like closing deals. Davidson shrugged. Well, you can file the initial formation documents yourself. He can be added to the operating agreement later. Though I should mention, he paused, adjusting his glasses. Without filing an amended certificate or operating agreement, you'll remain the sole member of the LLC. That's fine, I said, barely listening. My mind was already on the code optimization I'd planned for that evening. Ethan and I trust each other completely. Those words would later taste like ash in my mouth. Davidson slid the certificate across the desk. Sign here, initial here, and here. My signature looked strange on the official documents. Ava Harrington, member, singular, the only name on the foundational document of what would become a multi-million-dollar company. But I didn't think about that then. I thought about neural pathways and frequency analysis and the people we were going to help. Keep the original somewhere safe, Davidson advised as he handed me the stamped certificate. You'd be surprised how often people lose track of these things. I filed it in a folder marked legal stuff and forgot about it. After all, Ethan and I were partners. The paperwork was just a formality. The seed funding changed everything. $2 million from Apex Ventures, conditional on what Ethan called standard terms. He handled the negotiations while I focused on what I did best, making the technology work. Our algorithm could now detect not just anxiety, but early signs of depression, PTSD, even the manic phases of bipolar disorder. Each breakthrough felt like unlocking a new level of human understanding. We hired our first employees in the summer. Dr. Sarah Chen, a psychologist from Northwestern who understood both the clinical and technical sides. Marcus Williams, a full-stack developer who could make our clunky prototype sing. Lisa Patel, who built data pipelines that could handle millions of voice samples without breaking a sweat. I loved our morning meetings in the cramped Fulton Market office. Pizza boxes from late-night coding sessions, whiteboards covered in equations and flowcharts. The excitement of building something that mattered. But gradually, subtly, things began to shift. It started with small things. Ethan scheduling investor updates during my deep work hours. His name appearing first on company communications. The way he'd summarize my technical explanations as if translating for children. Let me handle the business side, he'd say whenever I questioned a decision. You're too valuable in the lab to worry about this stuff. The lab. As if I was some researcher in his company rather than the person who'd invented the entire technology. But I pushed those feelings aside. We were growing too fast for petty jealousies. Our beta users were reporting life-changing results. A teacher in Detroit who caught her anxiety before a panic attack derailed her classroom. A veteran in Phoenix who finally understood his PTSD triggers. A teenager in Portland whose parents got him help before his depression became critical. These stories kept me going through the 16-hour days and the growing sense that something was wrong. The first major red flag came during our Series A negotiations. Ethan had arranged meetings with 3 top-tier firms, all eager to lead our $5 million round. I was excited to finally present the technical roadmap directly to investors. Actually, Ethan said the night before, I think it's better if you join by video. We don't want to overwhelm them with too much technical detail. Too much technical detail. The technology is literally our entire company. He laughed, that dismissive chuckle I'd started to hate. Investors don't care about the how, Ava. They care about the what and the how much. Trust me on this. So I sat in our Chicago office, watching through a laptop screen as Ethan presented my work to a room full of decision-makers in San Francisco. He was good, I had to admit. He made complex neural network architectures sound like magic, made our competitive advantages seem insurmountable, but something twisted in my stomach as I heard him say I instead of we, as he described insights that had come from my 3 a.m. revelations as if they'd appeared to him in a dream. Great job today, he texted after. They loved my vision for the company. My vision, not ours, his. The funding closed in October, $5 million, valuing Cerebra at $20 million. The tech press went wild. Stanford MBA and team revolutionize mental health detection. My name appeared in paragraph 4, described as the technical lead. Not co-founder, not inventor, technical lead. It's just positioning, Ethan explained when I confronted him. Investors respond better to business founders, but everyone who matters knows this is your technology. Everyone who matters. But apparently, the tech press, our investors, and our growing team didn't matter. Only the invisible everyone in Ethan's head, the ones who somehow knew the truth while being told lies. I threw myself deeper into the work. If Ethan wanted to be the face of the company, fine, I'd be the brain. I developed new models that could detect subtle cognitive changes, early warnings of dementia and Alzheimer's. Our accuracy rates climbed to levels that made neurologists take notice. We filed provisional patents, published papers, built a fortress of intellectual property. But fortresses only protect you if you hold the keys. The moment I realized how naive I'd been came at the Digital Health Conference in Denver. I was presenting our latest research to a packed auditorium of physicians and researchers. The Q&A was brutal doctors challenging our methodology, questioning our ethics, demanding proof that we weren't just another AI snake oil company. I answered every question with data, with peer-reviewed studies, with live demonstrations that left skeptics stunned. By the end, the room was buzzing with excitement. This was why I'd started Cerebra, to put powerful tools in the hands of healers. During the cocktail reception, I overheard two doctors talking by the bar. "Blair's algorithm is genuinely impressive," one said, "though I wonder how much he really understands the neuroscience behind it." "Does it matter?" the other replied. "The man's a visionary, built this whole thing from scratch." My champagne glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the marble floor. As hotel staff rushed to clean up, I stood frozen, processing what I'd heard. Blair's algorithm built this whole thing from scratch. Dr. Harrington. One of the doctors had noticed me. "Wonderful presentation. You must be proud to work with such innovative technology." Work with, not create, not invent. Work with. Like I was a lab technician following someone else's blueprint. "Excuse me," I managed, fleeing to the bathroom where I dry-heaved into a marble sink. That night in my hotel room, I called my old college roommate, Clara Nguyen. She'd become a corporate lawyer, specializing in startup disputes. We hadn't talked in years, but she answered on the second ring. "Ava, it's been forever. How's the startup life?" "Clara, I need your help. I think I'm being erased from my own company." The silence stretched long enough that I checked if we'd been disconnected. "Tell me everything," she said finally. "Start from the beginning." I talked for 2 hours, laying out every detail, every red flag I'd ignored. Clara listened without interrupting, occasionally asking for clarification. When I finished, she let out a long breath. "Ava, I need you to find your incorporation documents. Tonight, scan them and send them to me." "Why, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking you need to know exactly what you own before this goes any further." I flew back to Chicago the next morning. Skipping the conference's final day, in my apartment, I tore through filing boxes until I found the folder marked Legal Stuff. There it was, the Certificate of Formation for Cerebra Analytics, LLC. My name stood alone on the signature line, Ava Harrington, organizer. No mention of Ethan Blair. I scanned and sent it to Clara, then searched through every legal document I could find. No operating agreement, no membership interest purchase agreement. Nothing that gave Ethan formal ownership of anything. Clara called an hour later. "Ava, do you understand what this means?" "That I'm an idiot who never finished the paperwork." "No, it means you own 100% of Cerebra Analytics. Legally, Ethan Blair is an employee, not an owner." The room spun. "But he's been diluting shares, signing contracts, making decisions, all of which could be invalid without your explicit authorization. Has he been signing documents as CEO or managing member?" I thought back to the investment documents, the employment agreements, the office lease. Yes, all of them. "Then you have a problem. Or rather, he has a problem." "But Ava, this is going to get ugly. If Ethan's been representing himself as an owner, if investors think he has authority, he doesn't actually have." She didn't need to finish. I could see the lawsuits, the chaos, the destruction of everything we'd built, everything I'd built. What do I do? First, you secure evidence, every email, every document, every piece of code you've written. Back it up somewhere Ethan can't access. Second, you need to understand your options. I can recommend someone in Chicago who specializes in this, or I can fly out myself. You'd do that? Ava, you invented technology that could save lives. I'll be on the first flight tomorrow. That night, I worked with mechanical precision. I copied every line of code I'd written, every research note, every algorithm iteration. I documented the development process with obsessive detail, creating a timeline that proved the technology existed before Ethan ever entered the picture. I backed it all up to multiple secure locations, encrypted and hidden. Then I did something I'd been putting off for months. I filed provisional patents on every piece of core technology, listing myself as the sole inventor. It felt like drawing a line in the sand, declaring war on the fiction Ethan had created. Clara arrived the next afternoon, rolling a small suitcase and carrying a leather briefcase that meant business. We met at a coffee shop in Wicker Park, far from Cerebra's offices. "I've reviewed everything," she said, spreading documents across the small table. "The situation is complicated but not hopeless. Ethan's been acting as an apparent agent, someone who appears to have authority even if he doesn't. Some of his actions might be binding on the company, but his fundamental claim to ownership is baseless. So what's my move? You have several options. You could confront him privately, try to negotiate a settlement. You could file a declaratory judgment, asking a court to clarify ownership, or..." She paused, meeting my eyes. "You could wait, let him dig himself deeper, document everything, then strike when you have maximum leverage. What would you do?" Clara smiled, sharp as a blade. "I'd make sure I had every possible advantage before showing my hand, but I'm not the one who has to work with him every day." Working with Ethan became an exercise in controlled fury. Every time he presented my work as his own, I documented it, every decision he made without consulting me. I watched him give interviews about his vision for mental health technology, knowing that vision had been born on my bathroom floor during a panic attack. The breaking point came in January. 15 months after we'd closed our Series A, Ethan called an all-hands meeting to announce we were raising a Series B $20 million at a $100 million valuation. The entire team was there, including our advisors and several board observers. "This is our moment," he announced, standing at the front of our now spacious conference room. "When we started Cerebra, it was just an idea. My idea that technology could predict mental health crises before they happened. My idea." The words hit like a physical blow. Sarah Chen caught my eye, her expression confused. She'd been there from the early days. She knew who had invented what, but she stayed silent, like everyone else. Ethan continued his revisionist history, painting himself as the technical visionary who'd recruited a team to execute his breakthrough. By the time he finished, I'd been reduced to a footnote in my own story. "Questions?" he asked, beaming with manufactured charisma. I raised my hand. "Just one. When you say your idea, can you walk us through the technical implementation? I'm curious about your approach to neural frequency analysis." His smile flickered. "Well, that's really getting into the weeds. The important thing is the vision." "But the vision is the technology," I pressed. "So explain it. How does the algorithm distinguish between anxiety tremors and normal vocal variations?" "We can discuss technical details offline," he said, jaw tightening. "Let's focus on the funding milestone." "Of course," I said sweetly. "Wouldn't want to get into the weeds of the technology that is our entire company." The meeting ended with uncomfortable silence. Ethan stormed out, and I heard him on the phone minutes later, voice carrying through the thin walls. "We need to discuss Ava's role going forward," he said. "She's becoming a liability." A liability? The person who'd invented everything we sold, who still drove every technical breakthrough, was a liability. That evening, I met Clara at her hotel. "It's time," I said. She nodded. "I've been preparing. We'll need to move fast once you show your hand. He'll try to destroy evidence, maybe even lock you out physically." "Let him try," I said, thinking of the certificate sitting in my safe deposit box. "I've got backups of everything." We spent the next week preparing. Clara drafted cease and desist letters, prepared filing documents, created a legal strategy that would protect both me and the company I'd built. I continued working as if nothing had changed, pushing out new features, supporting our team, pretending I didn't know what was coming. The invitation came on a Wednesday afternoon. Ethan's assistant scheduled an urgent strategic discussion for Friday morning. The meeting invite included someone named Richard Steinberg from Steinberg and Associates. Their corporate counsel, Clara confirmed when I forwarded it. He's preparing to force you out. This is good. It means they're making the first move. Remember everything we discussed. Record everything if Illinois law allows. Stay calm. Let them show their hand first. Friday morning arrived gray and bitter. Typical Chicago February. I dressed carefully professional but not desperate. Confident but not aggressive. I slipped my phone into my pocket. Recording app ready. The conference room held Ethan, Steinberg, and 2 security guards trying to look casual by the door. The setup screamed intimidation, but I'd faced down rooms full of skeptical doctors. This was just another performance. Ava, Ethan said, not standing or offering a hand. Thanks for joining us. This is Richard Steinberg, our corporate counsel. Our corporate counsel, as if the company belonged to him. Steinberg slid a document across the table. Ms. Harrington, we're here to discuss your transition out of Cerebra Analytics. I didn't touch the paper. My transition. The company is moving in a new direction, Ethan said, voice dripping with false regret. Your contributions have been valuable, but it's time for fresh leadership on the technical side. Fresh leadership, I repeated, to replace the person who invented the core technology. Let's not relitigate history, Steinberg interrupted. We're prepared to offer a generous package, 10% equity, vested over 4 years, conditional on a comprehensive non-compete and IP assignment. You want me to assign my intellectual property to the company. Standard procedure, Steinberg said. All work product belongs to Cerebra Analytics. I finally picked up the document, scanning its pages with theatrical care. It was worse than I'd expected. Not just an IP assignment, but a retroactive acknowledgement that Ethan was the sole founder, that I'd been hired as an employee from day one. This is certainly comprehensive, I said mildly. I'll need my attorney to review it. I'm afraid time is of the essence, Ethan said. We need an answer today. Of course you do. I set the document down and pulled out my phone. Clara, yes, could you join us in conference room A? Thanks. Ethan's face went white. Clara Nguyen, my attorney. You didn't think I'd sign something like this without legal counsel? Steinberg frowned. Ms. Harrington, bringing outside counsel into an internal discussion is necessary, Clara said from the doorway. She walked in like she owned the place, which technically, as my representative, she sort of did. Gentlemen, I understand you're attempting to terminate my client. This is an internal matter, Steinberg blustered. Is it? Clara set her briefcase on the table with a satisfying thunk. Because from where I sit, you're attempting to force out the sole owner of Cerebra Analytics, LLC. The silence that followed was beautiful. Ethan's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Steinberg's confident expression crumbled into confusion. I'm sorry, he said finally, but Mr. Blair is the CEO and majority owner. No, Clara said simply. She pulled out a certified copy of the Certificate of Formation. Ms. Harrington is the sole member of Cerebra Analytics, LLC, as established at formation. No operating agreement or amendment has been filed transferring any membership interest to Mr. Blair. That's impossible, Ethan sputtered. I own 40%. The investors have been materially misled, Clara continued smoothly. Every document Mr. Blair has signed claiming ownership interest in this company is potentially fraudulent. Every representation he's made to investors about his stake is a possible securities violation. Steinberg grabbed the certificate, studying it like it might reveal different information if he stared hard enough. This can't be right. I've reviewed the cap table myself. Based on documents provided by Mr. Blair, Clara asked. Documents that were never legally executed because they required the signature of the actual owner. I watched Ethan